why does all of this why does all of this matter? So a huge part of what we are going to be doing in nowadays, especially you as a developer or a data analyst, is you're most likely going to be writing and doing a lot of thinking as compared to probably writing code. So right now, with the use of AI and whatnot, we might not have time to probably read through documentation, for example, because AI has that knowledge. We can just assimilate the information that it provides to us to get our solutions working or whatsoever data insights that we need functional. The reason why we write first is to make our thinking much more clearer as compared to the things that we just have in our head. So I might have an information that I want to convey with you. I don't have the opportunity to speak face to face with you, but putting that in writing has proven to be one of the things that I've been working for a very long time. That's how history has been passed on, much more information, and therefore that's why documentation is very, very critical. So my time as a technical writer, it was much more like I approached it as something interesting to do because I used to like reading documentations. I could read documentation about a particular tool as compared to even reading a book. That was a great thing I found very interesting. So that's how I got started into that writing career. But it doesn't have to be a chore for you. It can be something that you enjoy doing, or you can just have a certain goal, a particular goal that you want to aim. Like I need to be able to convey this information very, very importantly. So that has to do a lot of thinking. You have to think in the place of the reader, think in the place of somebody who is new, think in the place of somebody who's an expert that's trying to assimilate that information. So it's much more thought bending than you think. So as a technical writer or as somebody who writes any technical content or anyway, you are most likely going to be the go-to point where people like developers or managers, your team members, look up to. Again, even if you're that team member that wants to look up to somebody that writes in your team, it's good for you to be able to translate your knowledge. So technical writing is it's a very thoughtful thing because again, you're transforming information and it's a very future-proof skill. All the AI models that we have now that can do a lot of the heavy lifting that we do, we're being trained and they gain their knowledge from things that people have written on the internet, like from documentation, blog posts, whatever resources. So this doing all of this ensures that the information that is being passed through doesn't come in a deformed manner, right? So if I figure out something that is how it is and I want to share it, there's most likely some other person out there that has experienced that same thing that can find that information very, very useful. So it has to be a visible thing. So you have to see writing as something visual. So whatever points that you're listing out, visualize it in your head like this thing that I'm saying doesn't make sense to whosoever the thing is targeted to. So we're going to get to that part. But writing a whole lifts the burden off. Even if you say you're a genius and you're trying to accumulate a fact, you need to understand what has been written. So it means that you who is putting out that information are in one way or the other a genius. So you need to see yourself in that light. So whatever thing that I'm doing has to be accurately communicated the way it's supposed to be, right? So now the real cost of poor clarity. Let's take for example, what do people have to lose if whatsoever thing you're communicating is not clear? In the case of developers, there'll be a lot of bugs. Let's take for example a documentation about how to use a certain API is not correct. Again, this is for the developer side. You can go implementing something expecting a particular response because of what the documentation says, but that's not the use case or that's not how the server responds to whatsoever thing that has been happening. And that can lead to a lot of time wasted. And for someone like a data analyst, if you given a whole graph like, hey, you have this chart to present this data and you don't well describe your findings, somebody can look at it. Yeah, they'll have an idea of what that data insinuates, but your writing has to back the findings. You're not explaining your thoughts. You're just having them visualize what is being seen, what they are seeing right there. So bad writing can cause a lot of decision fatigue. Like for example, if something instead of you to communicate your points clearly, you are giving the audience the room to try to understand what you are trying to say, whereas you just have to make them understand. I don't know if that makes any sense. Anyways, if you are an engineer, for example, data analyst or whatever, and you learn the art of writing very well, not just code, learn the act of writing very well. So not just code, but actually writing out your thought. You'll be a very valuable member in your team. Trust me. When I was doing technical writing, is it when I was? Well, I still do that every now and then, but I was like a go-to guy everywhere in the team. Somebody like, hey, we have this information that I need to go out, pass it through. So like that collaboration, the fact that you can um take thoughts or what people are thinking or something that is actually there and put it into writing for others to understand. You are definitely a face of whatever thing you are representing. So you are the one responsible for putting that out of that. So if you are, if you can make mistakes like in the words, the way you position your words or how things are, then that's a cost. You're costing your company, your startup, whatever thing, you're costing them money or you're costing them pain. There'll be an effect on like, hey, this is not accurate. And you don't know who is watching or who is consuming that information. You can lead to frustration. So writing is very critical more than you think. I don't know how much experience you guys have with writing, but just see it as that way. It's not just mere English. You are communicating facts and points to technical and non-technical people. I know it's called technical writing, but we'll come to that aspect as the audience, with respect to the audience that you're writing to. So yeah, again, out here down here, I'm just writing like engineers who write well leads team. Those who don't merely execute tasks. So let's take for example, if you're working in a team, again, we're going to touch this along the line. If you're working in a team, there is a reason why a ticket has to be described for you to work on it. So they have to explain what you need to do. Whosoever that is writing that thing or that's creating that ticket needs to be able to convey whatever thing needs execution or what modification is needed for you to be able as a developer to implement that. So if you're taking yourself away from the writing end, then you always just be the guy that executes. There's no harm in that, but there's just more room if you can understand writing and have things done. Anyways, it says don't write what you know, write what the reader needs, and not everyone know you. So let's take for example, if I'm not writing like let's say a personal statement about myself, then I don't need the user to relate to me as an individual. If we say, for example, let's write about how Jitsi work, like this application that we are using currently for this meeting, write about it, the experience. So there is no need, unless the goal of that writing is to share your experience using the application. If you are writing specifically for somebody who is using Jitsi, you don't need to share your experience. You are telling them when you join the meeting, input your name, choose whether I want to allow the mic or whatever thing, depending on what the moderator has said. So your focus or the goal, whatever thing is supposed to be on what you are writing about. So a key factor to note here is who is reading whatever thing they are writing and why are they reading it and what knowledge or what should they get? What knowledge do they already have coming or approaching this information they're about to share? So who is reading? It can be your teammate, it can be a tech lead, a product manager, it can be maybe somebody that you're trying to sell something to, like a marketing team, can be a customer, someone they are trying to convince. So whosoever is consuming that information or who is reading that document or that statement, whatever it is, you need to write to tailor to them. You're not writing about yourself. You're writing so that it suits this particular audience or this person that you're writing to. Now, why are they reading this thing? Someone like a product manager or your manager in the team, you most likely be writing to give them feedback and update them on findings. So you don't want to be guessing things. You can place suggestions, place your findings, but you don't want to guess like, I think, yeah, it's okay. But that is not the approach I should do. The product manager is not going to go in and start looking for why do you think so. You are there as a technical person. Tell me your findings, tell me what you've seen. Don't share like your doubts or whatever thing. If you have that doubts, yeah, it can be discussed. But if you are providing feedback about a particular thing, like let's say you are running a sprint or whatever, then it has to be concise. So are you writing so that, for example, are you writing so that they should implement a feature, then be clear about what feature it is? Are you reporting a bug? Be clear about what it is and express your finding. Now, the knowledge, the person that is approaching that document they have written, let's take, for example, you are documenting about a product, like how to use, like what OpenAI. Yes, please. Yeah, if you need to, you can interrupt along the session. I might just keep ranting. Thank you, Icepack. Yeah. So the person approaching your documentation, you need to know like the background. So if I'm writing to a developer, I know that this developer will most likely have enough development skill to understand this concept that I'm about to share through. So you don't have to go start. Let's take, for example, if you're documenting APIs, you don't have to go and start explaining what a post request is, what a get request is, because the audience you're expecting is most likely developers, and developers should already know that that has already taken away all of that prerequisite knowledge, which you can just note like this documentation is tailored for people like this. You are expected to have an understanding of how this works. So you don't have to go and start explaining all these fundamentals because you know who you are writing to. So that is very, very critical when you're writing. Again, don't write what you know, write what you are trying to express. I don't know, it might have several ways of doing it depending on what you are writing. You're writing about a product, about a tool, about your findings, about statistics or whatever thing, but you're not writing what you know. You're just writing the fact as it is. Now, the reader needs to understand what you say, what you've written, and not everything you actually know. Because behind the scenes, you can know like, hey, this is how this thing works internally, but it's not relevant for the reader. So those are things to note on. Then the next point. Try to just switch my slides. Mm, Please, if you have any question along the way, feel free to. Now, this is a typical example. I would like us to just real quick. It's going to be short. Try to understand the audience and the context of this information. Now, this might not be a very basic statement, but I just want to get your thoughts on what you think. So the original statement is the system processes user data and applies transformation before output. So from just reading that particular sentence, again, it's difficult to get context out of a single sentence if you don't know what it's about. But this is just to get you guys flowing. So I'd like you to identify who the intended audience for this sentence is, right? What critical information is missing. If this is intended for a developer, again, I've just tried to make that. And how you rewrite this for a data analyst teammate. Just I just want to hear opinions. Please, if you can type in the comments, have about a minute or two to just think about it. The system processes user data and applies transformation before output. So again, like we said behind here, mm, you need to understand who is reading this, why are they reading it, and what prerequisite knowledge do they have reading this information. So this is it. I'd like to get opinions. If you like, if you have something and you want to share, please think. I don't know if you guys have access to unmute your mics, but yeah. There is no correct answer, by the way. Don't worry. Okay. All right. Prince Kingsley, would like to.
Princely's hand is raised. So Princely, you can go ahead.
Presley,
Is
yeah,
it
you can
Princely?
go.
Kingsley, sorry.
Okay.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, Miss. Truthfully, I'm looking at the question and it's really vague to me from a point of view.
Mhm.
But following the questions that are there, who is the intended audience for this segment? I think that the audience, like the system processes user data and applies transformation. So I'm thinking that the audience here has to do with probably the teammates, the people that are working on that system, and the critical information that is missing. I don't know the kind of transformation that they're processing on data or who the output. I just know that I think the output is supposed to be for the developers of the system. Then how would you rewrite this for a data analyst? Personally, I really don't know what to say there. These are just my thoughts.
Okay. Thank you. I think we have another hand. Tambe, yes, please. Somebody's hand was up. Not sure who. All right. Kingsley, do you want to add something again? All right. Does anybody have any other thing to add or to share? All right. Okay. So I'd like us to break the statement, like try to find out into three sections, right? I'd like us to break it down like this: who is reading, why are they reading it, and what knowledge do they have? All right, spaghetti thoughts, please. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Looking at the statement, I would think that the statement is intended for the developer. Yes. So the second question is what critical information is missing for a developer? Okay, so I think the developer would probably need information concerning the components that would that are necessary to process user data and
Mm-hmm.
what transformations are expected to give the desired output.
Mm-hmm.
How would you write this for a data analyst teammate? I think the data analyst teammate will be more concerned about what type of data, what what would constitute appropriate user data for the system, appropriate user data of the system, and how it should be, or at what point it should be applied in the system, or those sort data will be applied in the system to give the expected transformation.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That is very, very good. Okay. If I can share, I'd like us to break this statement down. The system processes user data. Now, this sounds more like you are reporting something, right? So the system, maybe whatever thing you're working on. Again, at this point, we're seeing you as a developer. So we're saying the system processes user data. So you're reporting to somebody, you're telling somebody about it. Now, and applies transformations before output. So what do you want to convey? Again, back here to this point, this is very, very critical. Who is reading? You are reporting to somebody. Why are they reading it? Because they want to know what the system does. And do they have any prerequisite knowledge coming to it? Now, this statement is very, very vague to understand that. But from knowing your audience, you can predict like what kind of knowledge they have, or from knowing who is reading it, you can try to depict what kind of knowledge they have. Now, you guys are saying this is directed for a developer. Right here, this was even a telltale sign that I said, what critical information is missing for a developer? So if there is information missing for a developer, this statement is not directed to a developer. That was just what I wanted you guys to see. The system processes user data. You are reporting to somebody, most likely a product lead or whatsoever. So this is what I'm saying here. The audience is most likely a non-technical stakeholder. It's too vague for an engineer. Yeah, that was a trick. I just needed you guys to understand the first two statements of the. That's why I brought the slides back. Who is reading and why are they reading it? So the system processes. We are reporting about maybe the system that we are building and what it does. You cannot be telling your teammate that this system that we are building, this is what it does. Again, this is not the best way to communicate that, because your teammate most likely knows all of that, but you are reporting to your product lead or whatever thing, manager, whatever. That is what this thing that we're doing, this is what it does, so that they have an understanding or know how to steer you guys on what to do better. So this is a suggestion here. So it's not likely, most likely a non-technical stakeholder, but it's too vague for an engineer. Because you don't want to, like, when you're telling somebody, sister, and we are processing the data, they want more information, just like how you guys were requesting for more information. You guys are thinking more, a lot like developers, right? And then misinformation, well, the data sources, specific transformation logic, like you rightly asked, because that is missing, that you don't know what transformation, think Kingsley, that you don't know what transformation was being run or whatever. because yes, you're thinking as a developer, and with all of that missing, this particular statement doesn't suit something that I can write to a developer. That's just the idea. Now, for data analyst guys, again, just to improve it, this is something that can be rephrased in so many ways. But if you are reporting to your manager or somebody that you are reporting an information to, it can be something like this: service cleansing company user records by removing. Again, you can use by removing duplicate. Somebody's talking. Okay. By removing. Let me see, one second. By removing duplicate data from the CSV, I just wanted like just some data analyst words to fly in there. But that's just the idea, right? So you need to understand who is reading. Again, this is very, very key, like to where you're writing. Who is reading this thing? Why are they reading it? And what knowledge do they have reading this thing? So it's very, very critical, no matter what you want to write. So yeah, but that's just the idea there. So who knows the meaning of TLDR? Who knows the meaning of that? Should I call it an abbreviation or whatever? Yes, please. Spaghetti thoughts.
Okay, so TLDR, too long, don't read. I think it's really just an alert to say that you can have just there is a short version of something available, but if you would like to proceed with a longer version, more in-depth version of a piece or maybe an article or a document, then that's available. But then again, here's a summary if you want it.
Okay. All right. So again, this right now, CLDR is a valid excuse in a developer world. Like you can actually, well, again, be careful depending on whatever company or what environment you're working. Like somebody can send you a report and you reply them like this is too long. I do not read it. It's a valid excuse that people make, especially like when you're talking to stakeholders, for example, or you're reporting to somebody slightly above you. They can like just discard your word and not even look at it because there's a lot of writing there. Now, every technical documentation, this is just something they have to keep in mind. Again, this just boils down to the fact our attention span, again, as humans, it's very, very low. So unless somebody really find interest in whatever thing you're sharing, they might not try to give the attention. That's not to say you should try to make everything catchy or very hooky or whatever, but try as much as you can to compress whatever information you're sharing good enough that somebody can just get the key points. Most especially if you're communicating or reporting something. So every technical document, again, like README, Jira analysis, whatever thing, and in most cases, emails that is sent out to clients, right, needs to start with these three questions. You have to ask, what is this that I'm sharing? Like, what am I sharing? And why does it exist? Why am I sharing it? Let's put it that way. Why am I sharing it? And what do I want this reader to do? So an explanation of that is, what is this? What are you sharing? Let's say I'm doing an email campaign to get users to update an application. Why? So that when they update the application, they'll have new features. Again, I've already used the word update, but that's the next step. The next step, what do I want them to do? To probably go to Play Store or App Store. So whatsoever thing you are saying should be able to convey and touch on these 3 points. So I'll be like, I don't have an example writing. I just thought of that right now. It would have been good to have. But in this case, for example, that I want to prompt users maybe via email to update or share them change log or whatever. What are you doing? I'm trying to write an email to all the users for my application so that they should update the application and have the new features that is very critical. And what do I need them to do? I need them to open the App Store, Play Store, whatever, and download the app. Again, this boils down in so many aspects. Like for example, or in most open source projects, or even as a team, you guys most likely keep records of your change log. So if you remove a comma somewhere in the code because what example can I use? Let's say a typo. If you fix a typo, just a typo somewhere, you don't want to go and start saying remove typo, whatever thing, whatever. reporting those kind of things in the change log like that. You just have to give the key aspects of what you've done and the impact that it causes. Again, if it's something that needs any action to be taken, then you also phrase it in that statement, right? And this also applies to when you're creating commits. Your commit should be good enough. What is this commit about? What is this commit about? What change or what improvement did it make to the code base? And what do you want whosoever the reviewer to do? So you can always write like this statement, this particular way can sometimes incorporate just the first and the second step without needing any call to action, depending on whichever audience you are writing to. But then again, no matter what we are saying here, everything that we're discussing here, I would like you guys to always have this in mind. Who is reading this thing? Why are they reading it? What knowledge do they have coming to it? So it's very, very critical. Now, I would like us to summarize something like this. This is what is say. The raw note says, I looked at a sales data set. I found 500 duplicates. I removed them using the ID column. We need to use this for the Q3 revenue report. Don't use the old CSV anymore. So if you can, I would like a lot of you guys to participate. This is why you can just write normally in the chat here. Just try to summarize this in a form that somebody cannot say, hey, this is too long to try to understand. Because if I'm scanning through this, everything looks important. I see a number here. Oh, sorry. I see a number here, 500. I want to read that line. Or I see Q3 revenue here. I want to read this line. I see an ID column here. Everything here looks as something that needs my attention. But then I cannot look at everything because I have a lot of other things to look at. So if you can summarize this to maybe a sentence or two, then let's see what you guys have. Please, everybody, if you can just type in the chats, it'll be very, very interesting if you to see what you guys come up with. Okay. Anybody? Do you guys have something?
Sorry, just a moment.
Okay. Okay, a sentence or two. It doesn't have to be. Okay. Okay.
Louis, are you understanding me? Lizzie, even you.
No, my internet was disturbing, so I had to.
Me.
Theo, can you accumulate your thoughts? I see you have two comments. Can you? Right. Okay. Asang, I got yours. I agree with Asang. But your English most likely will not be the same. Because Asang started the statement with small I. All right. Is anybody writing? So I know who to wait for. The sales data set contains 500 duplicates based on the ID column. I've removed them. So instead of the OCSV. Okay, nice. I found 500 duplicates. Okay. That is, well, I don't know if you guys have seen the chats, but I'll read aloud. I don't know. Can I pin any comments? But yeah, Asang and Theo said, I have checked the data set and I noticed about 500 duplicates. I removed them using the ID column. This will be relevant for Q3 report. That's what they say. Spaghetti Tot says, the sales data set contains 500 duplicates. Based on the ID column, I've removed them so you can use this for the Q3 report instead of the old CSV. Jamison says, from the data cleaning session, I found 500 duplicates. I removed them. This is important for the Q3 revenue report and only for the old one. Shen says, sales data set has 500 reports, 500 duplicates, removed them using ID column, and we will use this Q3 revenue report. I've updated Tambe. I've updated the data set that we will need to use for the Q3 summary report. The old one should be discarded. It had 500 duplicates, which removed. Anyways, it's so great to see how you guys are thinking about this thing. But again, before I look at what we are supposed to break down at, let's just reflect on this aspect. What is this that we are trying to communicate or describe? Why are we trying to do it? Right? And what next step do we want to do? So what is this? We are trying to explain how we found 500 duplicates and we removed the duplicates. Again, so okay, first off, let's try to break this down. Who is this information directed to? Or who is the audience? Who is reading this thing? Right here, you say for your project manager. That's very, very clear. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is your project manager most likely will not be interested in the ID field or whatever, knowing that you did this using the ID, whatever. So if we know that this is directed to a project manager, again, going back to this, a project manager, why are they reading it? So that they can get an insight on what we're about to share or whatever thing we have done for Q2, right? Is it for Q3? And do they have any knowledge coming in? A project manager, most likely, they can or they might not know SQL. So that's why I have to, where is this thing? That's what I have to think. So I'm writing to the project manager. There's a high probability they might not be very skilled at SQL like I am. And I want them to know that I've evaluated this data set, I've removed the duplicates, and we now have a new data set to use for Q3 report. Okay, so back again to this point. What is this? We are trying to communicate our findings, what we have done, and what should be done. Again, sorry, I'm mixing everything. What is this? We are trying to communicate our finding, why it exists, like what do we solve, the duplicate issue, the next step, what should be done. They should not use the OCSV anymore. So you see that, like, just mentioning the ID column, if this thing is so, like, I don't know if you guys are understanding, this thing is related, right? Our audience and how we should communicate the information, it's all related. So most likely, just to put in summary, we can say something as simple as let me try to phrase it before looking at what I actually wrote down. Say the document explains, it says a clean sales data set relevant for the Q3 revenue report, and no need to use the OCSV, something like that. Let me see what I wrote down, because project manager, maybe the team. I'm sorry for you guys. Okay, it's okay. But now this is actually what is supposed to. This is an example. This document outlines the cleaning process for the sales data set, where 3% of duplicate rows. There's nothing mention of 3%. More revamped statement, where 3% of duplicates. Column. Okay, there's no mention of 3%, wherever that came from. This document outlines the cleaning process for the sales data set, where 3% of duplicate rows were removed to ensure data integrity. Again, you are writing to a layman who doesn't understand like what an ID or whatever strategy used in cleaning the data. Please use the CSV. And now, instead of saying something like, don't use the old CSV anymore, they don't know what the old CSV, because you guys must have dealt with so many old CSV. Sorry, I'm not giving you guys a lot of context to work with, but I'm just trying to provoke your thoughts, right? I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah. So remove to ensure data integrity. please use the sales V2 clean data set for all Q3 revenue. Now, the reason for mentioning exactly this is just dummy. Yeah, I think the recording should be available. I think so. Now, this is just to make sure that we are directing the project manager. The project manager will most likely have a lot of data sets that you guys have exchanged in the past, a lot of things that you guys have done in the past. So when you say something like, don't use what's the right thing? What's the statement say? Say don't use the old CSV anymore. You are not exactly telling him which CSV to use. So he doesn't know. I have a lot of old, he'll be like, Prince, I have a lot of old CSV. Which one should I not use? But instead, direct him like, use this one, because that's the action that I want him to take. You don't want to leave any room for him to guess. Again, this is an expect when you are reporting to a manager. Communication with your teammate can go quite differently. But if you're reporting to a team lead or a stakeholder or say a client they are working with, you need to be clear to get accurate results. So it should sound something like this, much more detailed. Now, what did we do? We cleaned the data set. Why? To ensure data integrity. And next step, use version 2 of the reporting, or don't use the old one. Don't just say don't use the old one, because there's a whole likelihood you guys must have shared some information before, or a couple of CSVs before this current version. I'd like to ask, do we have any question before I proceed? Anybody? Okay. All right. Over to the next thing. Now, when you're documenting code, this is a typical thing. Like these days, I know we use a lot of do a lot of AI assisted coding. That's what I mentioned in the beginning. Like we are going to most likely spend a lot of time writing English than we write code. So when you're documenting code, your documentation or your comments or whatever thing should explain the how and not the why. Most likely people like you see somebody writing a function, they'll explain um how can I phrase this? They explain like exactly what the function does, but you have written that code because you know what it is, right? You know the logic of that programming language, you know the syntax and whatsoever thing. That if you look at that syntax or that particular block of code, you should be able to deduce how it executes, right? But now commenting should not comment, explain your code. It should explain the intent of that code. And a lot of that has been done these days with using doc strings, which can be used to automatically generate documentation. Again, I'm just highlighting this. You can research more and look at what it does. So a doc string should answer this question, like if you're commenting or code, if you are trying to write comments on code or documents code, for example, what does this code do? So you're not explaining the code, but what it does, right? The input and output, if needed, again, that's if you're going to detail, and the edge cases or side effects in case if something wrong, like let's say if a particular parameter is null, that's detailed documentation. That's how you do like code documentation. I wish I had like a couple of snippets to present to you guys how it looks like, but a lot of the documentation, like when you how to use an SDK, if you want to integrate an SDKs, a lot of their documentations are usually just generated. A very good platform is like that. The way that is, its docs is being generated from the source code and whatnot. You don't have like a dedicated team that will go and sit and start. They can do the maintenance, but documentation can be generated from the code comments. So you need your comments to also have the intents when you're commenting it. Now, this is another exercise. This one is SQL. So have this, like if you understand SQL a bit, you can know that we are selecting something from somewhere. It's just like a typical example of what it does, right? So this statement here, I'm going to read it out as it is. But I just hope like you guys have an idea or can interpret it briefly. You don't need to understand SQL, for example, but you should get an idea of what this is saying. It says, select user ID, email, you truncate the date, the month by month, according to create that. This is a relationship from users where is active is equal to and email looks like gmail.com. So from this, can you just try to explain to me like the query, the intent of this particular query, like of this particular statement, SQL statement, like what it's supposed to do, and why would a developer, again, what does this code do and why? Just try to tell me like what this code does. You can make any fictional thing, right? just it can be fictional. Again, I'm not tying it to anything so that you should not be related like, hey, this is for this particular use case. But it can come with any fictional scenario. Like I think that's the reason why in this section when I added that 3% to explain where is this thing? This 3% is to add more context because it's fictional, but I just need you guys to understand the concept. So just try to explain the intent of this query and why this is critical. Please, that's you have about a minute or two. You can just write in the comments like we did for the other, or if you want to speak out, I think you can do that too. We are trying to get the information of active users who use Gmail. Interesting. Hola, that's good. Prince Kingsley, yeah, you can go on.
Thank you, sir. I think that we are trying to select a user who is active and whose email ends, his email is a Gmail, like it ends with gmail.com.
Okay, cool. So a user who is active and his email ends with gmail.com. Mm-hmm. Is there another person that has something to share? All right. So I'd like us to break it down. Again, this is just just a simple code snippet in your as Sang says, we want to get the active users whose email ends with @gmail.com. Yeah, these are all valid valid, how can I say, valid opinions. Okay, this query displays emails of active user ending with Gmail. So I would like you guys to look at something. You guys are telling me you are answering my question, but here it says write a comment. So what Desmond has done right here says this query displays sounds most likely like something that you can put like on the top of your code as a comment, right? So that's how I have to structure it. Something like this. You are telling again, if you are looking back at this code I have written like 6 months ago, again, it takes a very little time for a programming language to just disappear in your head. You can look at that code base and you're wondering like what's happening here? What's happening in this segment? But if you can read like this query displays, I understand that people saying we want to get it's in this context that we are speaking, but you should be thinking as, hey, I'm writing a comment to explain the intent of this query. You should be thinking as such. So this is something like this query displays is a good way to start it. But now, yeah, I see a lot of you neglected this date trunc moncrot. Yeah, it's most likely because you don't know what this that truncation, that particular query does. It's most likely because you don't understand that. But you should not ignore this particular section because it's part of it. It's just a simple code snippet. What relevance does this talk? Maybe if you don't, even if you don't know, just making mention, say by the month or by created ad. Like for example, this query displays emails of active users when they were created, active users ending with Gmail at gmail.com by when they were created, something like that, just to show you that you have captured this aspect. Again, if you are looking at this query after a period of time, you might not know what date trunc was, but the statement, the comments I have added in front, like by when they were created, can give you an idea of what date trunc does before you start going look into documentation or whatever that particular method does. So this is what I have for an answer here. But these are very valid reasons. I want to get you guys thinking about how to phrase things that I say. So we have something like this. It says identify Gmail-based active users for the monthly cohort. This is just very, very, very straightforward. Again, commenting, you're not trying to overdo. This is in code now. You're writing the code, but you just need to comment. So from this thing, identify Gmail-based users is cool. Identify Gmail-based active users, yes. Gmail-based active users. Do I have annotation here? Do I have? All right. So identify Gmail-based active users for the monthly cohort. So this date truncation takes in the current month and the created at month where that user was created for this particular as called. You are just casting this into this variable. So this is an idea of how this can be interpreted. And then more example, like the statement I say, why would a developer do this? You can just add more context. But this first statement is very, very critical for this kind of commenting. So say it's used for retention analysis or excluding inactive accounts to prevent bias, and it selects user ID, or this is a statement, select user ID email. So this particular statement of code that identifies Gmail-based accounts can be used for retention analysis or exclude inactive users to prevent bias whatsoever thing. Again, there is a reason why you're writing that query. What does the query do and why? It might be very tedious to write code like this, but there are use cases where it's very, very important. Like if you're working in a corporation, imagine if, let's take, for example, I work in a big company like Google, for example, and they don't have like good code documentation or style guide to follow. I'm going to touch about that later. But this is how these guys, or if you're working in a huge team, this is how you can pass down code or enter a code repository. You see what previous developers have done, and you are able to follow up because there's good commenting and code documentation. So a bad example can select user IDs and email from users who are active, where it's very obvious from code, like I mentioned. If you are looking at this thing, as long as you know SQL or you've ever seen SQL before, you are never going to forget that this you are selecting user ID and email where they are active. This doesn't look like something, if you know SQL, you know what you're doing, this doesn't look like something that you can forget or something that anybody who knows SQL needs a reminder of. So that's why this statement is not a very good statement. It's very obvious from the code. A good explanation is explain why the Gmail is selected and why the filter for active users. That's just an additional. Again, this is high grade, like commenting. Again, I'm just trying to get you guys like how we're working in corporation or very big companies, teams that rely on each other. You need to comment code like that. You can take example like the open source projects out there. You can just look at how they do their commenting, just so that people can be able to understand code and contribute. And they have like guides for all of that. So yeah. All right, thank you guys for that challenge. Now this is another one for Python. Maybe that was very disturbing. I'm sorry if I have a lot of exercises. I just want to get thoughts out of you guys. But this one is a function. Is it a method? In Python, we'll call it methods. Yeah, it's a method that calculates churn. So it's a def calculate churn. Just be thinking of how you can rephrase this. Calculate churn. It receives a parameter and it looks through it, whatever thing, for inactive, and then return the length of whatever. So I don't want to read the code out loud because I'll put some understanding. I don't know if you don't understand Python, it's totally okay. But if you like to make an attempt or like to hear what you guys think about this particular query or this particular method. One minute. I just need about one or two. If you can share what you think about this. So here it says clearly, write a docstring that defines the function, the purpose of the function, the arguments you receive, and the return value. All right, no problem. Does anyone want to share? You can unmute your mic and talk about it. But then again, know that when you're writing, it should be in a written format, like, hey, this is what this does. Just like we have this example behind here, identify Gmail based. I'm not saying that we are trying to identify Gmail based, no. Is anyone making an attempt? Please, you just let me know, or I can walk through it. Okay. All right, Jenison, please. Yeah, go ahead.
So can you get me?
If you're talking, I
Hello?
don't know. Okay, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, so what I think from my own perspective, this gives you the ratio of inactive users on the total number of users in the system.
Okay, that's good. This method filters inactive users and returns a percentage of the inactive users. Very good. All right. So I would just like to talk about it. First off, the function itself says calculate churn. So I think the basic of programming when you're already programming is name your functions in a way that you have to understand them, name your variables in a way you have to understand them. So in this case, calculate churn should give you an idea of what it does. So churn, what's the meaning of churn? Just to keep it simple, in terms of building SaaS products, churn it refers to simply the rate at which maybe customer cancels their subscription or stop using a particular product, right? So that's why we have this status here. We're tracking a status if a user is active or inactive. Let's say, for example, I want to calculate the churn rate of people that are active in my application. I can say if you are inactive in the last 30 days, automatically just set your status to, in the last 180 days, for example, you should set your user status to inactive. When you visit the application, then it changes it back to active. So churn here has to do something like activity. And this function is saying that we are calculating churn. That's the first key point. So whatever thing they are saying right here should most likely or in some way make mention of what the outcome of this function does. So it says reduction that defines the function, the purpose of the function, the arguments, and the return value. So Jamison mentioned ratio, which is correct, one way to put it, a ratio. And but again, if you are saying ratio, you are expecting this how can I phrase it? In terms of writing, I don't know how to explain how it doesn't really suit. That is what the function does, but you are seeing it that way. But this is not what we are trying to calculate right here. It is correct. You said the ratio of inactive users, but it most likely has to be with corresponding to what if you are referencing ratio. But Desmond says return the percentage of inactive users. I don't know if you see how that ties in much more likely. So Desmond says the percentage of inactive users, which is correct because we are dealing only with inactive users. Now, we are not trying to use this value. We are explaining what this function does. We don't care about what it doesn't do. So using ratio is like we are comparing the inactive to active users, right? But we are returning the percentage of inactive users. Sound more like what this particular piece of code does. So we are returning, we are calculating, returning the percentage of inactive users to know our churn rate or whatever thing. Now I cannot phrase what I wrote in the next slide here accurately, but I need you guys to understand like this is how you should approach things like this, right? So we are looking through every user. For user in this user's list, again we says defines the function purpose, the arguments. Nobody mentions the arguments that it received. So it receives a list of users, and the users most likely have a status field or status column, status row, status field. Anyways, the user should most likely have the status field because we are doing this check across it. So right here, this is my suggestion for phrasing that. I says again in Python, this are comments like block comments or whatever thing. So it's different for each programming language. I don't know if you take note, but it's different for each language. But it's just an idea of how you do all of this. So it calculates the churn rate as a percentage of inactive users. That's what it does, and what that's the question you guys are um, trying to explain here. Very simple. It calculates the churn rate as a percentage, Jameson, not a ratio, which good job, Desmond, for spotting that out. Calculate churn rate as a percentage of inactive users. That's what that particular method does. Now, the arguments users, which is a list, because we are looping here. Again, this is detailed code documentation. This is different from like commenting. This is code documentation. It's different from when you are writing comments or commenting your code. Most like huge projects share this as compared to comments. So it's just a good practice. Like if you know, even if you don't get to use it, but just know that this is what people do to be able to have code bases that live for long and can change through how technology changes. So the argument receives a user list and returns a ratio of inactive. Jameson, this is what you see. Returns a ratio of inactive users to total count. So it's going to be 0.1 or 1 to 1.0 so that we get the percentage. But this is not what we are not finding a ratio in this case. We are looking for a percentage because that's what we need. If I'm doing a good job explaining this thing, but yeah, that's the idea. So if somebody is to rewrite this function in in say JavaScript, for example, reading this, it should most likely be able to replicate that same function. That's if our code base change, like we are changing from using Python to JavaScript, using this thing, we should be able to replicate that function. But if you just say calculate the churn ratio based on this, and it's not very clear, the churn percentage based on this, if your statement is just like that, the new programming language they are writing or the developer that is writing that new programming language might most likely go and return, if this thing is supposed to return 0.3, which will amount to 30%, the person can already do the calculation down here and return a 30%. But documenting like this gives clear directives of what it receives and what it returns, how it should be. Because on the front end, maybe the front end developer now can be using these endpoints or using this returned value and then doing the convention to present the percentage value. But if you send 30 from behind here, simply because the code was not commented correctly, then that becomes an issue. All right. So again, do we have any question, by the way? Do we have any question? Okay. Well, since with no response, I'll just can move ahead. We have a couple of slides remaining. Now, what is docstring? It's a whole syntax. Like we have, let's take for example, documenting APIs. We have something called I don't know if I can do a Google search. In terms of API, we have something we call Swagger or API specification. It's a whole standardized way of documenting code. Let me put my correctly. But yeah, it's a standard of doing things, right? So for APIs, we have like Swagger or whatever thing. Docstring, special strings used to document Python code. Yeah, it says Python, right? So you need to understand the syntax of it. It's very, very basic, like how you report it, the way you see we've done here. It's very basic how you do the arguments to specify this. If in Python I document something like this, I can use code generation tools to automatically just generate documentation of what this particular each method does, or if it's say an SDK or a Python use packages, a package I'm writing, and I want to tell somebody like if you are calling calculate churn method, then this is how it's supposed to be. In VS Code, for example, before AI, the way code suggestion used to work was following all of these kind of things. So if you install a Python package for handling files or to do file modification, file manipulation, you can just do file dot. If you do dot, then all the suggestion and the parameters that used to come before, right, was because the code editor could read this package and then read this doc string, for example, and then tell the developer of what kind of parameter this particular method requires. Now, if you write your code like this, it is very, very easy for like English interpretation. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's a whole standardized and approved way of documenting code. What's the first screen? All right, I think the next thing we have is numbers don't speak, you do. So I know in data analysis, they say like, hey, a chart is more than, what is it? Say picture is more than 1,000 words. Yeah, but not everybody has the same interpretation, right? I can see a picture and I interpret it as this. I can see a chart and I interpret it as this. Worst case is if it's not labeled, but you need to be able to support whatever information you are presenting. That's why you see like, I don't know how many of you guys are in school or are writing reports. They say always label your pictures, like figure this, what is happening in that picture, or figure this, whatever. So that's very, very critical in case of, if I see this picture and I fully cannot make out what it does or what it is, then the written text or the supporting text, the subtitle, title, whatever, for that particular picture should give me a context and then guide my reasoning. So a huge part of that is you can see like some creative, let's say charts, for example, and they just say cure for analytics based on customer ratio, whatever thing, or subscription rates. That just gives you an idea of how you should interpret that chart. So those numbers, as much as they claim as pictures are 1,000 words. Yeah, you cannot compress everything, but they need to be guided. So in this aspect, we use the context, result, meaning, and next step is whatsoever thing. So if you are presenting data, again, this is either to your teammate or whatever thing to a customer, you need to understand what context that data has. Like this particular data is from, that's what I say Q1, like the first quarter of the year, analysis of what? Of sales. That's the context of this data that I'm presenting to you. So you can say Q2 analysis of sales, for example. That's a context. The result, what did it add up? Based on sales, based on this data or this context, what have we seen? We can say a 15% increase, right? So our Q2 analysis of the sales data showed a 15% increase. And most likely, since you're already saying Q2, A/B test email, test out how much emails. But that's the whole idea. What context or data did you analyze? What result did you get? What does it mean? And what action should be taken based on that? Again, this is for the data guys. When you're presenting data, I think you should have this by the back of your mind, and it should be clearly. I've given you these typical examples, like the aspect where sales increased is most likely because we did something correctly. Maybe we doubled our marketing, and our next step should be let's do more marketing. In this case, we have our churn went up to 8%. 8%, most likely because of our onboarding is broken. So what should we do? We should try to do A/B testing. Like, hey, if somebody creates an account, let's not just leave them go. Double down and try to see how are they doing. Have they completed the onboarding? Are they facing any difficulties? So from all of this data, you'll be able to communicate clearly to whosoever. So let's take for example, this is an example to explain this thing. Like the page load time is 5 seconds and conversion rate is 2%. Right. This is clear finding that I have seen. Like, hey, somebody was asking like, why do people not visit my website? Then you go and you check, you see that the page load time is 5 seconds and compared to maybe the last previous time they did analytics, the conversion rate for somebody to actually click on maybe the call to action button is 2%. Can you try to rewrite this statement following the context, result, meaning, and next step format? So I want to rely this as a technical update to a product manager using the context, result, meaning framework. So context, what did you analyze? The result, what did you find? What does it mean? And again, if there's an output or action that needs to be taken, what next step should be taken for this particular aspect? Please just try to execute this. Let me see. I think this is most likely the last exercise. So I like you guys to share your opinions. I end up needing a lot of writing. So if you're comfortable like speaking, but when you are sharing or if you are talking, please could you go back to the previous slides? Okay, yes, please. Context, what data was analyzed, the result, what did the numbers show, or what findings did you get, the meaning, what does that finding mean for the business, for whoever you're reporting to, and what should be done. So to write this as an update, I have to send to, like, for the past 2 weeks, you were asked to investigate why a lot of people were not converting from the landing page or from the home page. And you spent time, you dug around, and you found out that the load time is 5 seconds. Yes, Jamison, please, you can.
Hello, hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. For me, how I would rewrite this or how I would say this to a project manager is the page takes 5 seconds to load, and as a result, 2 in out of every 10 people, only 2 in out of every 10 people go forward with the call to action. And what I can suggest that we do is that we optimize our landing page, which can in such a way that can cause the user to go forward with the call to action.
Okay. Optimize our landing page. That's the action that's supposed to be taken. Okay, good. Sorry, I mistakenly closed this tab. Let me share my screen again. Yeah, do we have any other person that wants to share something? Do we have another person that wants to share something? All right. So in this case, again, rewrite this as a technical update for a product manager. So this is most likely coming from a team or you as an individual, depending whoever is whoever the task was assigned to. So as an individual, you want to inform the technique, like I did this, right? Analyze the page and we discovered whatever thing. This load time was 5 seconds. And then you already know that the conversion rate was 2% because that's how that tax came about. Where am I? Now, this is how I'm going to phrase this really. Now, I want you to understand like this statement, I want you to take note of something like teamwork here. So again, if you're working in a team, reporting something, unless this task was assigned to you as an individual, it's reporting to the product manager. But if you're reporting to a product manager, you definitely have teammates that you guys are coordinating. So this kind of things, like if you're reporting to a product manager, that level, depending on whatever team or the dynamics of the team, I'm not quite sure. But in most cases, you have your own leader, right? Your leader in your team that you have reported to. And to phrase this kind of thing, it's good to use the we, not the I. Again, if you're in a team, just for teamwork purpose. Again, that's just company dynamics. It's a good practice thing and how to reporting. All right. So I said, yeah, our audit again. Okay, I use the word audit. Interesting. Our audit of the checkout funnel, again, that's the context, shows a 5-second page load time, leading to a low 2% conversion rate. This is just writing, right? Which is a result. This suggests users are abandoning cards due to poor performance. Now, I'm not telling you anything. In this case, when I explain this particular challenge, I was using the word landing page. That was just an example, right? It can be on the landing page. It can be people are converting very late because on the checkout page, it loads a lot. There's a lot of like, if somebody has bought a product, they are loading a lot of assets and whatnot. So it's a fictional scenario just to hear you guys think and try to rephrase your statements. So I'm saying, this suggests users abandoning cards due to poor performance. That's the meaning. We recommend optimizing image assets to reduce load time to under 2 seconds. Now, if a product manager reads something like this, then they have to start thinking the images that we're using, in this case, for example, the images that we're using to display our product, because you do not have the right to go changing product images if you're working in a team or in a very huge company. You don't have that say. You cannot go and say, I did this to limit this. Who asks you to change that image? It might sound like a proactive thing, but there's a reason why they have those images that they have, right? On every big company, like any image that you see or any assets or whatever decision for a word that's on their landing page or anywhere on that website was well thought of to was well thought about before it's there. So you are reporting again this thing, we are reporting our findings and why this conversion rate is 2%, right? So this is what we found, and we suggest that image assets, you as a developer, since you've investigated, maybe you've looked at the network tabs, images are over like how many megabytes, and they see like compressing, maybe reducing the size of this image can lead to this reduction. Then now you can get the go ahead. Now I'm speaking a lot more like seeing you guys are getting to work in a corporate dynamics, right? It might be different for a startup that don't need you to take proactive actions, but that's where you as a developer and a technical person comes to play. You should know when you need to be proactive versus when you need feedback for execution. So these things are very, very key. That's why I'm having a mix of all of this. I we've spoken a lot about writing and how to structure things, but as a engineer, it is very, very important to understand Markdown. Again, if not for the sake that you're writing it, but to also understand like if an AI model spits out Markdown to you, you should be able to understand the structure. So a lot of documentation out there use Markdown. Again, it's easy to understand. They have visual builders that you can do like normal writing to Markdown, like how you call it? It has a word, text to Markdown. No, what you see is what you get, right? This kind of editors, how do they use it? Say what you see is what you get, editor. This kind of editors, that's you're editing, you're seeing like you're writing normal text, but behind the scene, Markdown code is being generated. So if you can understand Markdown, a lot of AI models appreciate that if you want to give context or provide detailed information. Now, it's always good, like if you're working a big code base or you're starting your own personal project, it's always good to keep your documentation close to your code. If you choose to move it out, that's also operational, that's also functional, but it's not generally a good practice. That's why in most of these like highly supported tools or solutions or softwares that they use these doc strings like we saw earlier to document their code base within the code base, right? So they can just generate the documentation without any hassle. Now, it's very important as a writer or developer or analyst to understand how Git works. You need to understand how Git works because maybe there's a change that was made and you don't understand what it fully does by just looking at the code if you want to write about it. But if you're able to track that particular commit and see whatever comments that was made or what discussion happened under that commit, it can give you an idea of what they were supposed to do. Now, I've written for code bases that I've written documentation for code bases that I don't really understand, like very high technical things. But just being able to have that context, if you have that underlying programming language, you'll be able to know like, hey, this syntax can depict this. You are at that high level to interpret what that code base does. And so you're in the middle. You need to understand what the developer has written as code, and you have to translate that to whosoever person that doesn't understand the code yet and wants to understand it. So you're in that middle, and you can clearly not understand what a code base does or what a solution do to even. You can give me a file, be able to write a docstring or document what it does, even if it's in a programming language. Most likely, at least I can try. Even if it's a programming language I've never seen, as long as the syntax it just looks the same. Again, it's programming, right? So that's what this kind of thing that you understand. And in most use cases, people use continuous integration, continuous deployment pipelines to deploy documentation. These are just things I have to be aware of. Again, if you want to deep dive into documentation, like each time that this thing change, automatically updates or deploy my documentation wherever it is. Now, when it comes about technical writing, these two writing style guides should be your key. If you can master, I know we use a lot of AI. I'm not refusing that fact these days, but if you can understand, if you want to write, if you can master like what we call about product writing or technical writing, if you're writing for an SDK, API, or whatever thing, these writing style guides are high up there. So Microsoft has a writing style guides that explains how you should do things, how you should use bullet points, how Markdown should be spaced. GitLab has its own. So you might enter a company and they're using a particular style guide. Google has one too, just so you know. And you need to follow that. It's very important that you understand how these style guides, what these style guides say and how it should be used. But generally, there's a whole convention around writing Markdown, like how much space you have to do before you start a list, how much whatever thing they have to, how much indentation you need to do. If you're using tabs or spaces, just depend on whatever style guide you guys come with. So all of this helps with consistency so that you should not do something different from what the team has been doing, the team before you has been doing, or what the future guys are going to be doing. Now, going on to publish a writing, again, it's very important for you to be brief, straight to the point. If you're sharing your opinion, a lot of what people do these days is they try to start with a whole story of how I remember, I don't know, a lot of you guys went Medium. Medium say where is Medium very, very active? I doubt with AI these days. But people used to share a lot of write-ups on Medium. We have Stack Overflow, people share information, and a lot of these other websites. Blogging was a whole big deal, right? And people get appraised or get like very remarkable feedback from by just blogging simply because they were brief. But these days, as attention is low, people are sugarcoating writing. Everybody's trying to make sure that, hey, my introduction should be something catchy just so that somebody can read it, because we don't read anymore. I don't know if you read. If you do not read, you should try reading. Even if it's not a book, read documentations. You have a whole different understanding about things. But when you're writing, be brief. Again, don't try to sugarcoat what you're saying. At least for technical writing, it's different when you're doing marketing. Be brief. Short sentences are clear. Point forms. You are instructing somebody on what to do or what or how something is. You're not trying to leave them room for doubt. So be brief, short sentence, why I said per paragraph, very, very clear. Now be concrete. Avoid, facilitate, utilize, leverage, say, help, use, all of these things. This is going to help us. You are not saying run ls-a, for example. Let's say you are giving a command. You say run ls-a to list out the files in the directory, something like that. You don't say run ls-a. This will help us list out the files in the direction. No, somebody who is reading that documentation is actually following the steps that you are telling them to do. So you need to be an instructor. You're instructing them to do. That's why the last point say you need to have an active voice when you're doing that. So we cleaned the data set, not the data set was cleaned. It's an active. You're speaking to somebody, right? So me who is reading, most likely in most cases, I need help navigating maybe something or implementing something in case of those people that will be blogging or whatever. So you're facing a difficulty deploying something, maybe with AWS and whatnot, and successfully managed to go around it. And you want to share the steps that you took to replicate it. So you're telling somebody, do this in the order in which they appear. You're not telling the person like, so you need to use that active word and be very, very instructive. Again, I think this is the one last one, but I did not plan to like focus on this, but the data was processed by the software engineering team in order to insight for the marketing department and for the purpose of making sure duplicates were removed. Don't you think that, for example, this one, don't you think there's a shorter way that this information can be rephrased? Most likely is because you are reporting the data was processed by a software. How is it important that you say software engineering team? How is it important to say this word facilitate, for example? So you need to cut down things, and this is what I have for that. So engineers cleanse the data to provide marketing with accurate, duplicate-free insights. Even if you are replying, like even if on chat, like on messaging, right? Like when you are communicating with your team, this is how you need to approach things, unless additional maybe explanation or context is needed. So your product manager will ask you like, yeah, what happened with that data? Just that's a simple message that they have sent you. Then imagine you go and start writing this. The data was processed. It sounds correct. It sounds valid, but in a, I'll not say agile because most likely might not be the use case for your whatever environment. But in terms of reporting and simply, your manager or your teammate has a lot of things to do. You don't want them sitting down to try to understand or put your sentences together. But you just report to the product manager like, hey, the engineers cleaned the data and provided the marketing team with an accurate duplicate fee insight. That's straight to the point. Be like, okay, that's good job. But the data was processed by the software engineering team in order to facilitate. Of course, that's why you're processing the data in the first place. Don't explain to me why you're doing it. For the marketing department and for the purpose of, don't explain again what purpose was. So I don't know, is it making sense? Is this all sitting up together? All right. Okay. Just want to make sure. Thank you very much. Yeah, but that's the idea. So from replying messages, writing out reports or feedback or sending out campaigns, don't joke, don't try to beat around the bush. Again, I know we don't read these days. When it comes to marketing, that's a whole different thing. But we're talking about like our technical writing and how we communicate critical facts. When it comes to people like marketing and sales, they can do all the flashy things. They can do all of that. But we are very, very factual and straight to the point. So this statement seems much more likely either as a report or a message that you're replying to, as compared to writing something like this. Well, the 5 rules to remember, again, when you're writing for the reader, not yourself. You're writing for whoever is reading. Just like how we claim to reply to messages and not have a conversation. So you have to see things the way it is. I'm writing to this person. I'm not writing for me. Whatever finding I'm trying to communicate, it's for them to understand. Now, start with the key takeaways. Don't make things to be too long. Structure bit style in every time. Again, this is a typical example. Engineers claimed the data was processed by software engineering team. But the engineers cleaned the data and then give it to the marketing, whatsoever thing. Now, explain why, not just what. You can understand. If it's unclear, fix the thinking fast. That's what I'm saying. Like, if you provide this kind of information, unless otherwise more context is needed, like which method, like if they ask you back what method were used to clean the data or whatever thing before you provide those kind of context. But if you are reporting to your teammate, you can say, I cleaned the data using this method, then I provided it to. So it's, well, you should be able to adapt and know when to, as that's just fall down to the line of how you call it, like who are you writing to. This is good enough for a manager, but for your teammate, this most likely will not be good enough, right? Because you need to tell them what method you use, most likely. That's why the first example we have, like, what do you think is missing in this context for an engineering team, for an engineering member? So you need to know who you are writing to be able to craft what kind of response you are sending to them. And it works even in your casual life, like maybe how you reply to your loved ones. You might try to be able to be soft and whatnot, but don't do hi and the hellos or whatever thing that you do, like in a working space, those kind of things, because you know who you are writing to. I think in English that's formal but informal writing, but it's the same concept. So you know who you are writing to. If it's unclear, fix the thinking fast. And I think that's just basically what this is all about. Thank you guys very much. I don't know if you have any questions. Do we have any question? Going to stop sharing. Can you guys still hear me? Okay. All right, this one.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't really have a question. I just want to say a big thank you for the insightful session. Personally, as a data analyst, this session has given me a lot of clarity, and I maybe there are a lot of things that maybe some mistakes that I've been making that from today I'll have to adjust them. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome. I'm glad. Thank you very much. Do we have any question? Anybody? Again, most likely might not be
Yes,
about
sir.
what we've discussed. Okay, yes, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for the session. I really learned a lot. I'm not really a data analyst, but I can say that I deal with data too.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you.
To an extent. For example, people that something that can also be handled by a developer, or it must be it must be like this aspect of technical writing. Is something that's also done by developers, or it's exclusively restricted to, let's say, technical writers?
If you're a developer in your team and you can write, trust me, be a hotcake. It's a very good habit, because the ability for you to communicate like this technical thoughts to, say, somebody who is not very technical to understand is a plus. Even if, again, I'm just trying to, I don't know, like, you guys' domains or wherever you work or wherever you interact with, but like up there, it's a very good skill. It's a very good skill that's highly like recognizable, because that's why there are people like technical writers. But imagine if you're a developer who can also write like very well, it will be a huge value to your team, right? So it's not just like specifically for technical writers, but you as somebody, you should be able to, again, if you can write very well, there's a high probability you'll be able to speak very well. The only discrepancy can be because maybe you're camera shy or whatever thing, you're not good at speaking. But there's a high chance, like if you can articulate your thoughts in writing very well, there's a high chance you'll be able to communicate them too in words, like when you're speaking. So it's all around a very good skill to have.
Okay, thank you very much, Roderick. I must say this is my most practical technical writing session. But I want to ask, how can we access these slides and the videos? Because that's and the video, because that's it will require plenty of study of everything you've said. You've said a lot. You've said a lot, a lot. So I don't know, how do we get this recorded, please?
All right, yeah, I think it'll be available. You can check with iSpark, the slides and recordings will be available. I'm going to share that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Where would they be available?
iSpark should share. I think they have a community, so it should be available. It will be available immediately after this. Whenever they choose to share, I don't know. That's it's not mine. You can clarify, please. When will you guys make it available? So Spaghetti Thoughts, they will make it available. I don't know exactly when, but it will be. Is that clear?
Yes, that's clear. Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, Luis, your hand is up. You're muted. I don't know if you're talking. Luis, are you there? All right. Do we have any? Anybody has any other question before I hand over? Okay, I think that's it. Thank you guys very much, and keep writing. Don't only write, but try to read, please. Try to read. Thank you. All right, Miriam, are you there?
Thank you very much.
Hi, Rodrigue.
Yes, I'm done. I don't know. Thank you. I don't know if there's another thing.
Okay.
They were
Okay.
asking when you make the session available.
Sorry, I didn't get you.
They were asking when the session or the recording and slides, when will you make it available? I can share the
Oh,
slides.
yeah, it's going to be available immediately. So I'm just going to share some links in the chat so that they can join our WhatsApp group, follow us on LinkedIn, and also check out the YouTube channel. The recordings will be
Okay.
on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
All right. Rodrigue, thank you so much, guys. Thank you for attending, and I hope you found the session really, really insightful. Rodrigue, please, do you mind sharing your LinkedIn so that they can also connect with you?
My LinkedIn. I'm here on LinkedIn.
Nice. Let me put the other links on the chat as well.
Okay. All right, guys. You people should enjoy the rest of your year and yeah, read. Try to read.
Alright, guys. So in the chat, I've shared the links. You can join our WhatsApp group. We have a developers community. Connect with us on LinkedIn, and also there's a link to the YouTube channel where you're going to find the recording of the session. So once again, thank you guys for joining, and see you in the next event. Goodbye.